You're very welcome to Tree Talk episode 205 with myself, Jack Neville, and Matt O'Callaghan of the Weekly Observer and Vale Star. Another bumper weekend of action to look forward to and some weekend to look back on. We have a share of hurling and football to come this weekend, a load of semi-finals. The championships are really heating up. We had a couple of finals last weekend, so stay tuned for all that and more.
The impression again we get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it hard. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
A good afternoon to you, Matt, of this Wednesday. It's dreary enough out there. It's fairly grey. I was in McNeville last night for under-21 hurling between Mungert and Patchwell, but it was all right. It was a lot better than this time last year. I was in McNeville for another 21s game, but it's definitely
that was played on the Astro, was it?
No, it was played on the main field where the new stand has been developed. Good game, 121 apiece.
I saw that.
Patchwell had Patrick Kirby sent off in the first half, but they were 5 ahead at half time. Munger got the lead. Liam Lynch came on. It was good to see him back after his knee injury. They went 2 or 3 clear, and Patchwell got a goal from a very long free one straight into net. I suppose a draw was deserved, but you know it's real winter season when you have the 21s hurling. But it's great to see them games being played. But we will start with hurling.
Very good to see Liam Lynch back. Liam Lynch back and picking up where he left off, scoring the goal.
Oh, yeah. I think he scored. He went straight onto the free. His first ball he got, he won a free, slotted over. I think he got 1-4. One of that was from play. But, I mean, he's a real difference maker, not only for 21s, but the senior team will be looking just for him to get through that campaign. And I suppose he'd probably be with the Limerick 20s next year as well, such as his talent. But we will start with hurling today. We'll go through the senior hurling semi-finals we had last weekend. We obviously have junior intermediate semi-finals this weekend. We had Camogie, and we'll go on then to the football and finish predictions. If there's anyone out there that wants to miss any of that, that's probably the lay land for today. But one thing we've noticed, starting with the inter-county scene today, Matt, one thing we've noticed, I suppose, over the last 24 hours was the sequence for the Munster Championship next year for 2023, and you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself, but we have the sequence for the Munster Championship as Limerick go in search for 5 in a row for the first time ever, from my understanding and my checking the records. But starting with Walsh Park, Matt, haven't been there since 2019. Obviously, a big win that time. Then you're welcoming Clare to the Gaelic grounds. You're going then to Semple Stadium, and then Cork at home in the final round. Exciting times. Any way these games would have been laid out in the Munster Championship was going to be difficult, but Limerick will still be the team to beat when we start again, probably next April or May.
Yeah, like this now information is on the Munster Council, Munster GAA website, and you're right. Any day you have to go to Walsh Park, it's a tricky start, Jack. It's a tricky game, and it will be very interesting to see how Waterford will regroup under Davy Fitz's second coming, and we'll be keeping a close eye on them during the league campaign. But one way or the other, Jack, it's going to be a serious test. And then we have to face Clare in a repeat of the Munster final of this year. In the second round, we have a bye in the third round before we travel to Thurles. And who knows what kind of a team Tipperary will have this year. I suspect it will be a much improved Tipperary. Dean Cahill has gone in there. He will be relying, I would imagine, on a lot of the players that helped him to win back-to-back under 20 and 21 All-Irelands. And then we conclude with a game against Cork at the TUS Gaelic ground. So it's it's amazing. Here we are embroiled in the middle of the club action in the split season, and the focus is beginning to slightly turn towards the championship, the Munster Senior Championship of next summer. But that's the way the GAA works these days. So look, I really think that the sequence doesn't matter. If you're good enough, you will come through, and it's the ultimate test of any county, especially the two counties that will advance to contest the Munster final, and the third county that will go through to the All-Ireland series. Like Limerick's lofty ambitions of 5 in a row, it has to be, I suppose, in normal circumstances, probably, and all things being equal, the first thing starting out every year would be to avoid being in the bottom two and missing the cut. But don't ask me for predictions at this stage, Jack. But look, it is what it is. We knew before any sequence or anything like that, we were going to Waterford, we were going to Thurles, and that's the way it has panned out. And Clare at home in the second round. As you rightly said, Jack, that there is no easy game in the Munster Championship. The structure of the Munster Championship is such now, and indeed I suppose the same for the Leinster Championship, but maybe not to the same extent. But the reality is, 2 from 5 for the Munster final could be any 2 from 5. So a lot to look forward to. And of course, the football draw was made during the week as well. Yeah. It was made on Thursday night, and Limerick, by virtue of the fact that they played, reached the Munster final last year, were seeded along with Kerry. So in the semi-final, Limerick will be facing the winners of the quarter-final between Cork and Clare, whilst Kerry will face the winners of the Waterford versus Tipperary quarter-final. So, something something for Ray Dempsey to be thinking about. He's going to meet one of the old firm possibly in the semi-final if they get over Clare, and it's going to be a battle of Division 2 sides, because for the forthcoming league, Clare, Cork, and Limerick are all in Division 2 of the Football League. So we'll get sneak previews of how they match up to each other during the league.
Yeah, we'll certainly have a rematch in the Munster Football semi-final, as you said, with both those teams in Division 2. And likewise for the hurling, there was never going to be an easy draw, but Limerick will certainly go into the championship as favourites. Again, no dates on those games, but judging by this year, it'll be kind of mid-April. The hurling will probably start, and by the time Limerick play the football, it'll probably be into May, considering they're in the semi-final. But that's all ahead of us. We've more pressing issues to come this weekend, and as I said, we'll start with the hurling. And we'll begin by looking back briefly on last weekend's Limerick Senior Hurling Championship semi-finals. On Saturday, the Piercing were relatively dominant, 123-9 winners over South Liberties. Fairly straightforward for the Carradavin side, who would have been heavy favourites for the game. But on Sunday, it was an epic outside the scoreline. It finished 113-2-9 in favour of Kilmallock against Doon. Doon for the majority of the game looked like they were going to be the winners, but we have Kilmallock and the Piercing. If you were a gambling man to start the year, you would have said that would probably be your pairing at the end of the year. But it's a mouthwater tie. We'll look into this in full next week. But for this weekend, Matt, I suppose the Piercing were dominant. Kilmallock scraped through. We've said before that you probably want that test in the semi-final, and by God, did Kilmallock get that off Doon?
They did. It was salvaging the final place right at the date, and it reminds me of the cliche: it's better to be nearly drowned than nearly saved, because for Kilmallock, for coming in the home straight, it looked as if it had to be Doomsday, but Kilmallock hung in there. I wasn't at the game, but I saw the game back, and Jack, the conditions were absolutely atrocious. It would be impossible for somebody to explain to somebody that wasn't there how bad the conditions were. The amount of torrential rain that fell, and it spoiled in some ways a game that would be one of the showcase games of the year. You had a stellar cast, and it was a semi-final that was going to showcase everything that's good about Limerick hurling, because we saw their semi-final, or we saw their final group game in which they drew down in Fedimore, and they produced an epic on that day again. Now some of the stars on both sides were missing, but I think Kilmallock will be very, very happy to get over the line, and they'll be very, very happy with the type of test that they have got in the semi-final. It's in many ways an ideal preparation for a final, to really have to dig out your semi-final, and that's what they did. And full credit to them. At one stage they were 7 points down when Dean Coleman got the goal early in the second half, and it looked bleak for Kilmallock at that stage. But by God, did they dig in there? And it's not in Kilmallock's DNA to lay down arms, and they certainly didn't, and they kept plugging away, and eventually that goal from Robbie Egan at the finish, it certainly broke Doon hearts, and one couldn't but have sympathy for Doon. It's one of those stories again, another chapter in the Doon story of being so near but yet so far. It was a heartbreaking way to go out of the championship right at the death. But of course, we've always said that the most dangerous lead in hurling or football is 2 points going in the home straight. And by God, it was brought to bear again. But I think Kilmallock will be very, very happy, first of all, to get over the line. But I think they would be very, very happy with the test that they have got, because you must remember that Doon came in with a certain advantage in that they had a quarter final. And they had a very, very good quarter final with Kildimo Pallaskenry, which really sharpened them up for the semi-final and probably gave them the edge. And they started off as if they had a grip in the thing. And like when you go 7 points up in a game, normally it's not a lot in hurling, but on a bad day like it was, it can become a bit of a mountain to climb. But Kilmallock found a response, and as I said, I think they will be happy. They will be happy, first of all, to get over the semi-final, not having got there through the direct route, and they really, really got a test. And late goal or not, you'd have to say that they passed the test.
Yeah, they certainly passed the test, and they did leave it late. And I suppose for doing it, you mentioned there, just another heartbreaking defeat. That's 2 semi-finals in a row. There was a final previous year, semi-final year before that, and the final in 18. But they will make that breakthrough. It's just a matter of if or when, not if. But it is Kilmallock, it is Napier. It's really mouth-watering, exciting time. But that's on the 30th of October. We'll be glad to have the Gaelic rounds back. But until then, we'll park the Senior Hurling Championship. Also confirmed is
so the Premier Intermediate. Just looking back on the Napier South Liberties game, I suppose it was going to be a bridge too far for South Liberties, but they had invested so much, I would imagine, in getting that win over Patrickswell, that probably there wasn't enough in the tank to really trouble Napier. But they stayed with him for half an hour, and because in that third quarter, which very often in games is the defining period, that Napier threw clear, and the Napier were odds-on favourites, and I suppose they were odds-on favourites from the start of the year in reality, Jack, to make it to the final. Yeah. And they're favourites to win the final at this remove, but that's for another day. We'll be talking about it next week. But full credit to South Liberties. They've struck a blow for section B, and we really got the answer that we were looking for and that we were hoping for. That the gap between A and B had been closed, because, as I said, and at the risk of being repetitive here in this platform, that in the early days of A and B, there was huge disparity when it came to the quarterfinals, and that went out the window last year when we had those two very close quarterfinals. We've had two great quarterfinals this year, and finally, a team from Section B has got over the line, which can only be good for the game in the county. And they went in and they broke what was the preserve of four clubs. And we were scratching our head here for the last 2 or 3 years, wondering who would break into that top four. We've got our answer now, South Liberties, and certainly that will give an awful lot of encouragement, to the Adares, the Ahans, the Ballybrowns of this world, the Kildimo Pallaskenry of this world. Kildimo Pallaskenry have shown in their quarterfinal performance against Doon that I think they will be quite comfortable and quite formidable when Section A comes around in 2023.
Yeah, I suppose one of the stories of the championship will be South Liberties and likewise Kildimo Pallaskenry, but we are down to the final two, and at the end of the day, it's all about winning the championship, and it'll be one of Kilmallock or na Piarsaigh, something we've become accustomed to over the years, but they meet in the Gaelic grounds on the 30th of October. We also have the final in the Premier Intermediate Championship. It'll be Bruff against Monaleen the day before that, the 29th. Monaleen came past Effin for the second time in a week, and Bruff needed extra time against Newcastle West. Again, we'll look into fully next week, but briefly, the semi-finals, they both delivered. Monaleen won by 6 in the end, but it was nip and tuck throughout, and obviously Bruff won by 1 point after 80 minutes. It just goes to show how evenly matched those teams have been throughout championship, and another, I suppose, star beside the Premier Intermediate Championship that has been, as we always say every year, probably the standout competition in Limerick hurling.
Yeah, Jack, you're right, and traveling down to Fedimore on Sunday, one would be excused for thinking that perhaps it was going to be another mismatch like the previous week. But I, for one, certainly didn't believe that was going to happen, because you had a confluence of events the previous week when Monaleen really hit the high spots with a top class performance, and Effin didn't show up. When you get that type of thing, you get a distorted you get a distorted result. But Effin really put it up to Monaleen. Monaleen definitely, without question, they earned their right to be in the county final on Saturday week. They were made fight all the way. There was only 3 points in it, with 1 minute of regulation time left. Now they hit Monaleen hit 5 points at that stage in jig time, in slightly less than 5 minutes. It was a fantastic scoring sequence, and it really put the game beyond Effin's reach. But to Effin's credit, they kept plugging away, and Fergal O'Connor and Patrick O'Donovan, who, by the way, ended up with 12 points in the game. They picked off late points. Like if Effin were going nowhere, they battled to the very end, which we expected, and they asked serious questions of Monaleen. And Monaleen, I think, when it was all over, they must have a sense of relief. Not just that they got through, but that they got a decent game in preparation for the county final. And that's certainly what they got. Effin gave them a decent, serious test. And again, as we were talking about Kilmallock and Doon, it was the ideal preparation, in my view, for going into a county final. Now, the Bruff game, I didn't see it, obviously, but it was a humdinger. And I suppose it's another phase, Jack, in the development of the Newcastle West Premier Intermediate hurlers. Like they have been coming gradually since they won the Intermediate Championship in 2020. Made the semi-final last year, were well beaten by Camogie, came back again this year. Now that's making the semi-final last year was under the truncated format, where we had 4 teams of 3, and but this year it was full belt, 8 teams, 7 rounds. They came through to the semi-final, and by God, did they come close to the final. The Newcastle West hurlers are a group of hurlers that are upwardly mobile. Now, in our predictions, I predicted that Bruff would win because I believed that they would. But by God, did they get a test? They got a serious test. So, in terms of semi-finals, Jack, both teams have got the ideal games that they'd want.
Yeah, definitely. As I said, one went to extra time and one was thereabouts for majority of it after playing the same team the previous week. And it's very hard to beat the same team twice in the season, not to mind in a week. So, yeah, that final is the 29th of October, the day before the senior final, Bruff and Monaleen. Moving
and it's
forward
in Kilmallock.
In Kilmallock, yes, of course. Moving on to this weekend, then, Matt, we have the semi-finals in the intermediate hurling, and the junior will start with intermediate, and I suppose we'll start with Na Piarsaigh, who play Granaballingary this weekend, this Sunday afternoon in Clorine at 1 o'clock. Na Piarsaigh were one of 2 standout teams. We'll get to the other one in a minute, but Na Piarsaigh obviously won all their group games. Were in the final in 2020. But they play a Granaballingary side. They got to the semi-final last year, not too long ago, since they were Premier Intermediate Senior. And Na Piarsaigh, you have to bear in mind that have a senior final to look forward to and an intermediate football final to look forward to. So, I mean, huge work being done there. But even though Na Piarsaigh won all their 5 games, it is an interesting one, like, that you could see go either way.
It is an interesting game that you could go, that you could make cogent arguments for both sides in this one. And I've been very impressed with Granaballingary over the last 2 years, Jack. They have been building. And as you rightly flagged, they were in the semi-final in last year. Now, they haven't been to a final since 2005, but a lot of years in the interim, they have been playing senior and Premier Intermediate. But they were unluckily beaten by Effin in the semi-final last year. Effin had to put out all the stops to put them away last year, and they have had a very impressive record, Jack, in this year's group phase. Even though they didn't finish top of the pile, they lost their opening game to Pro Kilfinney by a point, and they have really gathered momentum since, with 4 straight wins. Some of them very convincing in the group stage, and then a very convincing win over Doon in the quarter-final, which brings me to the point again about the usefulness of going the quarter-final route if you can get over it. And Na Piarsaigh have been inactive through no fault of their own because of the structure that they made it directly to the semi-final. But I think that this is going to be a very, very close. I was listening to the narrative earlier this week, and people saying, "Look, it's going to be Na Piarsaigh." I don't think it's as simple as that at all. I think there's something about Granaballingary, Jack, that they're going to make it very, very difficult for Na Piarsaigh.
Yeah, I'll get your predictions for that game in a while. But looking into the other semi-final, then Croke Kilfinney versus Granaballingary. Croke again won each of their 5 games. They were the finalists last year. They won the junior in 2020. They haven't really put a foot wrong really in 2 years. Effin were very good in the final last year. There was no complaints there. They play Granaballingary or Palace Green side, that only won 2 of their group games. But when you consider that Granaballingary and Croke were also in the group, you can kind of see why. And it's not you'd see this one is probably more straightforward. But Palace Green certainly have a shock in them, and it's not that long since they were Premier Intermediate as well. They have far more pedigree, Croke, at a higher level, but it does seem like Croke are on upward trajectory, just that slight bit more than Pallasgreen.
Yeah, then of course they've already met in the championship this year, and the scoreboard certainly would, the final scoreline would certainly whet the appetite for Sunday's game, because it ended Croke Kilfinny 19 points, Pallasgreen 115. So yeah, look, Pallasgreen. I thought Pallasgreen would not beat Brewery. They did. They were convincingly beaten in the quarterfinal last year by Brewery, and they turned it right around this year. And as you flagged, Jack, they were quite lucky to make it to the quarterfinal stage, because they did so with 2 wins, and they had to rely on a last day win. They beat Knockaderry in the first round, then suffered 3 straight defeats. As you rightly said, to Granaballangary and to Croke Kilfinny, and also to Kilmallock. And they won on the last day against Hospital Herberstown, whilst the same day Croke Kilfinny were beating Knockaderry. And that opened the door for Pallasgreen to get in and hit.
We're losing that there. I think you're just going on to say that Knockaderry and Pallasgreen both finished on 4 points in that group, but by virtue of that first round win over Knockaderry, Pallasgreen went through. As Matt said as well, they beat Brewery in the quarterfinal. You cut out there, Matt. I was explaining there that where the Gremlins are again. I was just explaining there that Pallasgreen and Knockaderry finished equal on points in that first round win. Came back to haunt Knockaderry, I suppose, and to give Pallasgreen the lifeline they needed. But they've, beaten Brewery, as you said.
They've grabbed it with both hands, and full credit to them. And we've known over the years, Jack, that there are fewer more dogged championship contenders year in, year out than Pallasgreen. They're a team that don't die easily, Jack. And they're not going to Clahan on Sunday to make up numbers. They will be going with a mission to make it to the county final, which of course is to be expected naturally when you're in the semi-final. But they've pulled one shot. Maybe the rabbit is out of the hat now, or the genie out of the bottle. But I think they'll give a very good account of themselves. We'll be coming to predictions later.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing to go into that game is they played it already, and there was only 1 point in it, so you're hoping for more of the same. But I will get you to call it in a while. Similarly, we have the junior semi-finals this weekend. Drumbradford versus Patrickswell and Killeedy versus St. Kieran's. Both those games are on Saturday at 3 o'clock in Croke and Newcastle, respectively. We'll start in Croke with the meeting of Drumbradford and Patrickswell. Patrickswell have won every game so far this year, but they did really steal the win against Doon in the quarterfinals, whereas Drum have probably been more building to this point, and probably one of their most impressive victories was against Castown Ballygran in the quarters, who were always a contender in the junior championship. I will get you for a prediction in a while, but if you were weighing this game up, where would you think it's going to be won and lost, or who was the form team?
Well, we've had very little opportunity, Jack, to see the Junior A Championship, because it has been coincided with the senior and Premier Intermediate, and we're really poking in the dark in this one. But your analysis of Drumbradford, I basically concur with it. But Patrickswell are dogged defenders, are dogged championship contenders, and they've been there or thereabouts for a couple of years now. But so have Drumbradford. But I have a sense, just as you have a sense, that it may be Drumbradford will get over the line on this one. I think they probably will, because they've been building up nicely. But and this is the caveat, and that which we inserted often enough in this platform this year, of combining hurling and football. And now they're into the really business end of the competitions, in both hurling and football. Come Saturday evening, Broadfoot could conceivably, Jack, be in 2 county finals with a considerable, I'd say, overlap of players.
Yeah, they do seem to have a lot of players overlapping, and it does seem the case, as you mentioned there, that if the footballers are going well, the hurlers do as well, and vice versa. Now, that always isn't the case, but a lot of time this year it has been. But from seeing Patrick Swell's under 21s last year, there was a share of lads that haven't been burned. Now, some of them might have been underage for the adult, but there's a lot of nice hurlers coming through in Patrick Swell. So, I mean, and they are the form team, on paper with 6 wins coming into it, but Drum lost their first, then drew, but they've put 4 wins in back to back and seem to be getting better. So, it's interesting. The other one then, St. Kieran's versus Kilmallock in Newcastle West. Kilmallock, by the skin of their teeth, got past Gregora Manister, needing penalties to see off Gregora in the quarterfinals. St. Kieran's far more straightforward against Kilteely Drumkeen. They've also won each of their 6 games this year. They were the finalists last year. Kilmallock lost their second most recent game to Castletown Ballygrand. Now, I know they were through already, but St. Kieran's are definitely the form team coming into this game.
Yeah, they're the form team. There's no doubt about it. And getting back again to the dual conundrum, that has been off the table for the last nearly 3 weeks now. For St. Kieran's, they were going well in the senior football, and now, and there's quite a considerable crossover, and they have full focus now on going one better than last year in the Junior A Championship, in which they were narrowly beaten by Caroline. And you must remember, Caroline was subsequently beaten by a point or 2 in the Munster Championship by Ballygiblin, who were beaten in the All-Ireland final by a point. Won the Munster Championship, beat Skehina Rink, and were just beaten by 1 point in the All-Ireland final. So, Kilmallock have been threatening with a breakthrough for a number of years now, and appear to have a decent squad. They had a good squad of players, but I think when it comes to the knockout stages of this competition, St. Kieran's will derive, they will derive great experience from going so close last year, and as well as getting the experience, it will be the spur and the goad to get him to go that step further, and they have been quite convincing in this competition to date. But it's going to be a West Derby, in many ways, and it's bragging rights are going to be up for grabs as well. So, I don't say it's one of those ones where form goes out the window, but form would tend to suggest that St. Kieran's will make it back to the final.
Yeah, on form, you'd imagine St. Kieran's come through, but you did mention the West Derby aspect of it. It is a really fascinating tie, and probably the standout tie of those 4 semi-finals. Look forward to probably the most evenly balanced on paper. But the 2 junior semi-finals are on Saturday, the 2 intermediate then on Sunday. The best look to all those teams. We'll get predictions going forward. We will move on now to Camogie before we get to we'll round out with the football. But in the Camogie, I suppose just an update on the senior championship. There's appeals. The decisions haven't been made on those appeals, so it's still up in the air with the senior championship. But we did have the conclusion of both the intermediate and junior. They were crowned intermediate champions, and Galway were comprehensive junior champions. You were at both games, Matt. We'll start with the junior. And we had with Galway Gales last week in the ladies junior football final, but as comprehensive a win you'll want in a final, and I suppose an indicator to any of the teams intermediate next year that they won't be any easy games against Galway.
No, there won't, Jack, and it was their 3rd final appearance in a row, and I suppose they really now they were a bit slow on starting. They had a strong breeze or whatever. That it wasn't exactly blowing straight down the field, but it was blowing definitely in their favour in the first half. took them quite a bit of time to make it count. They got a couple of goals on the lead up to half time, one right at the death, actually the last puck of the first half, and they had gone clear 2-10 to 2 points at half time, and Denise Mullins was playing full forward, and basically, Jack, she was unplayable. She ended up with 2-8, and that included blasting a penalty over the bar, a penalty which she won herself. And she was obviously directing it for the top corner, but just skimmed over the bar. But she ended up with 2-8. She was just outstanding. And so too was Emma Morrissey. Emma Morrissey ended up with 2-4. And Caroline Fitzgerald, who's only a 16-year-old, very, very, very exciting corner forward, Jack. She ended up with 3 goals. So it was very, very one-sided. But my hat goes out to Blackrock Effin. They really hit met Galway at their very best. And I suppose events conspired to a certain degree to against them, because they've only been playing adult camogie since 2019, which is it's a phenomenal rise to make it through to a first final in after 3 years. But they were missing 2 of their best top players, Ellen Meehan and Laura O'Connor, who were a big loss to them. And as challengers and as underdogs, you need everything to be going your way. So I don't know who won the toss, but they ended up playing against the Breeze in the first half. So had they played with the Breeze in the first half, got a bit of a lead, it probably wouldn't have altered the result, but we would have a much better game. But certainly Galway will be no pushover. Like in the environment of intermediate camogie in Limerick, I feel they'll be quite comfortable.
Yeah, and if you can do it in the biggest stage like that, you'd imagine you can be doing it in the other games. But congratulations to Galway on their promotion. Commiserations to Blackrock Effin. Just didn't happen on the day for them. And then in the intermediate final, it was a closer affair, but we had mentioned that Adair's firepower and inter-county players might prove the difference on the day, and I think that's the case as Adair made it back-to-back wins. It's easy to forget they were only junior champions, double junior champions in 2021, but their rise to senior ranks is complete. They'll play in the top tier next year, but a much closer game between Adair and Croke Kilfinny.
We were expecting that, Jack, and the conditions were no different to what they were in Bruff. Absolutely appalling, and it was a close game, a very close game, and full credit to both sides, Jack. They gave it everything. I suppose you'd expect that in a county final, but the conditions were so adverse. They really put on a decent performance. Now, Jack, Michelle Gallagher there, who's the manager of Adair and her management team there, they have assembled and fine-tuned a very fine Adair squad. Now, I got a hint of that in 12 months ago when they won the Junior A final. I was at the Junior A final, and I came away saying to myself, and I said to some others around the place, watch them in the Intermediate Championship, and that's how it turned out to be. They've assembled a very, very, very good squad, and I think Adair will actually relish the opportunity to benchmark themselves against the best camogie clubs at senior level. I think they won't be lost at all. But you were talking about inter-county players, and they really, really stood up now. Sophie O'Callaghan in the first half now. Croke Kilfinny had the aid of the Breeze and the Elements in the first half, and Orla Kelleher had 2 points up on the board inside 3 minutes from freeze, and it looked as if they were really, really going to make the Elements count, but that's not the way it worked, Jack. Sophie O'Callaghan and Grace McNamara, who was moved to full back, she normally plays up front in the absence of Louise Butler. They're really battened down the hatches, and They held them. They got 2 points themselves. Cueva Costello got a point from free. Annie Giltinan got the first point of the game from play. And about 3 minutes from the half time, Croke Kilfinney got a very, very good goal, finished off by Noreen Dinahan. But the omens didn't look good for Brian Sexton and his Croke Kilfinney side, because 3 points was a very, very slender lead, given the strength of the breeze. But still in all, it took a there, 11 minutes to get in front. Got a couple of Cueva Costello frees, and then in the 41st minute they got a cracker of goal, finished by Aisling Connolly, the 2-time All-Star with Galway. And once it came to her and once she was in possession, like that, there was only going to be one result. And they opened up a 6-point lead, or a 4-point lead. But Kilfinney, against the elements, to their credit, they plugged away and eventually got a point. I think it was about the 53rd minute, their first score of the second half from an Orla Kelleher free. And then a minute or two later, Keelan Madigan in a goal mode scramble finished to the net. So we had a level game. But immediately from the puck out, Cueva Costello got a point. She got the score of the game. It was a point for the ages. It was really, Cueva was named player of the match after, but it was really a big player stepping up in Adair's hour of need. She got an excellent point, and she got another point later from a free. But they won by 2 points, but it was a very, very good game, considering the conditions. An absolutely huge crowd. You can only guess what kind of a crowd would be there had the weather conditions been more favourable. Yeah. But it was an enjoyable game insofar as that we were able to stay dry, and like it was a fitting finale to the intermediate championship for this year. But of course, we knew that they were coming in with pedigree, and I think they really made a statement of intent when they knocked out last year's runners-up Monaleen in the semi-final. But Croke Kilfinney are in a good place, Jack. They're in a good place. If they keep their squad together, they're in a very good place. It was only 12 months ago that they were dicing with being relegated to Junior A. And they have regrouped and they will be a formidable force going forward.
Yeah, definitely. You need your big players to stand up. That's exactly what happened for Dare. And as you mentioned, you'd have no fear for them in the senior ranks next year, even though they were only junior last year, But congratulations to Dare and Galway on winning those Camogie titles. Before we get into football, Matt, we've seen a share of initiatives around, I suppose, supporting the referee and giving respect and getting respect. I think it is important to acknowledge that these people are giving up their time, and at the end of the day, there'll be no games without the referees. We've seen an awful lot of unsavory incidents in very recent weeks to do with referees, but it is important to give them respect, and they are human and they will make mistakes like everybody does, but just to understand that they're giving up their time and they're making the game accessible to all, and there'll be no games without them. I think that's the most important point, and no one goes out to ruin a game. I don't think anyone does that, so I think it's important just to give respect, and you'll get respect then in turn.
Yeah, that's correct, Jack. And the GAA have taken an initiative which will come into play this weekend. It's Respect the Referee Day, which will be in place over Saturday and Sunday. And I'm somebody, you know how I feel about abuse towards referees and all that sort of stuff, but I welcome it, and I welcome it, warmly welcome it. But there's another half of me, Jack, that says I deeply regret that we have to take these initiatives to respect the men and women who we cannot have our games without, the referees. And when I say that, I would like to expand it to the referee and his or her officials, umpires and linesmen. These are volunteers. These are dedicated GAA people whose only interest is in the smooth running of our games, going out and arbitrating in what they see. No agendas, nothing like that. And look, I'm delighted with the initiative, as I said, but half of me is disappointed that it had to come to this in alerting people. Like the unsavoury incidents, we see, they're becoming too common, Jack, and the abuse of referees from mentors and from spectators and all that sort of stuff. Jack, it has to stop. There is no place for it. There is no place for it, and should not be tolerated. Now, I think they're looking at as part of the initiative. They're looking at the rules with a view to how referees report such incidents and how such incidents will be dealt with. And I would be advocating that these incidents would be dealt with the sternest possible sanctions, because we're coming towards the day, Jack, where we already have a shortage of referees, because like, if you see the plethora of games that's on in our own county this very weekend, Jack, across so many, mainly hurling this weekend. You have intermediate, you have junior, and you have a whole raft of under 21s and 2 senior football games. There's a referee needed for every one of them, Jack. I think some of these men are doing 2 and 3 games at weekends. It just isn't fair. And then, disrespect being hurled their way, I'm afraid I don't get it, nor I don't tolerate it.
Yeah, and I suppose the message goes to the linesmen and umpires and, everyone that helps out in the game. The referees are the figurehead, but, anyone that's there to officiate needs to be given the due respect. But I think it is important to highlight it, and there's a lot of initiatives.
I'd be critical of a lot of the diktats that come out from Croke Park, but that's a very, very welcome one. And it's sad that they have to go down this road, and but down this road they're going, and I hope it will be the catalyst for a dramatic change in mindset towards referees and their officials. I'm qualifying that by saying it's not just the referee, the man in the middle, it's the team of 7. It's 4 umpires and these 2 linesmen. They deserve the same respect.
Yeah, I suppose anyone going to a game this weekend, maybe just take that moment before you go, just to be calm and just take whatever decision comes, just to take it at face value, because again, no one goes out to do a team or to ruin a game. But yeah, let's give respect and let's get it. I said we concluded the football, Matt, and we have 2 really exciting quarterfinals in the Senior Football Championship. We have Newcastle West versus Monaleen at 1 o'clock, and then we have Adair versus Father Casey's at 4 o'clock. Both those games on Sunday. Starting in Skeeton with Newcastle West versus Monaleen. 2 sides that are no strangers to each other at this stage of competition. Obviously met there last year. There's only 1 point in it, and Newcastle West went on to win the championship. They played in the first round of the championship this year, and Newcastle West, I think, were 5-point victors, but Monaleen have been steadily building aside from the loss to Newcastle and Casey's. Again, Newcastle West are the form team, are the defending champions, are the bookies' favourites, everyone's favourites. But when these 2 teams meet, it's always really close, Matt.
It is, Jack. You're absolutely right. All the forum pointers are towards Newcastle West. They're the defending champions. They're through to the semi-final directly. They have won all 5 games. Whilst Monaleen, Monaleen went into the last 2 games, Jack, with 2 points, and wondering if they would make it through or not. But they beat Tahon and Galway in the last 2 games, which propelled them up to 6 points and into the quarterfinals. But this wouldn't be the first time that Monaleen have been in this situation. They tend quite a bit to be slow starters and slow burners. But by God, when it comes to the knockout stage of the competition, you know, they are a different animal, as we saw in the quarter final against St. Kieran's. And it's going to be a big ask of Monaleen, but when these two meet, you brightly flagged that there has been very, very little between them. They met in the semi-final last year, and it was, you know, touch and go right until the end, until Newcastle West finally got over the line by 11 points to 10. You know, it was one of those games where Newcastle West had to pull out all the stops and to see off the challenge of Monaleen. And I don't think it'll be much different on Sunday in Escaton. But I think I'm believing that Newcastle West, I've seen them earlier on in the year, I believe that they're a better team than they were last year. I think they have moved on a bit, and they've moved up a level. And the day I saw them now, they were without Cian Sheehan, and of course, you know what he brings to the table. He's not an all-star nominee for fun, like, you know. So, you know, he's just a simply fantastic club player. You know, I think you and I reached the consensus last year that he was the player of the Senior Football Championship. You know, so he's back on board now at this stage. So, like, I saw Monaleen a couple of times. I think Brian Donovan, who's such a huge key player for him, is in the form of his life, absolutely. And like, they have a very good sprinkling of good players, and like, you needn't go any further than the goalkeeper Donald O'Sullivan. What a servant he has been to his club and his county. And he takes a certain amount of the frees for him, and quite a few of them with success. So like, it's going to be a very, very interesting game. It's one of those games, Jack, I'd sum up by saying that whichever one of them will be in the final will deserve to be there.
Yeah, and we talked about a lot about Newcastle there, and they've probably been the best team on paper in the championship for the bones of a decade now. But I think it's fair to say every year they generally have one complacent display. You know, last year, the first round against Galway, they were quite poor, and they got through it, and they went on in, I think, was it 2019, they lost to Ula and rebounded. But 2018, this sticks out for me when they were beaten by Ballylanders, when, you know, and the previous year they were beaten by Dare in the final, when they would have been heavily favoured to win both those games. That if there is any complacency this weekend, Monaleen are a team that can certainly take advantage of that. And Monaleen will be desperate to get back to a final, because for a powerhouse of Limerick football, they haven't been there in 6 years, which is a long time for them.
It's a lifetime for Monaleen not to have been there for 6 years. But they are a very, very good football team. And you're right when you say that Newcastle West invariably over the years have some blip in some game, and very often it has been costly. But Newcastle West have never won back-to-back titles in Limerick. Now, Monaleen will be coming in, and look, I hate bringing this up all the time, but it's a fact of life. And they will be coming in with the advantage of a quarter final. Whilst Newcastle West have been idle. And I saw Monaleen a couple of times. And the first time I saw them this year, I thought they were downright damn poor. But I saw it wasn't an improvement I saw in them in the quarter final with St. Kieran's. It was a transformation. And it was the type of performance that I have come to expect from Monaleen. You know, and like, they beat St. Kieran's comfortably, and they beat them for 35 minutes with just 14 players. So they are quite formidable, and look, it'll be squeaky bums time, I think, going down the home straight in Askeaton on Sunday afternoon, Jack.
Yeah, it definitely will. It's a really exciting one, and I'll get your prediction for it in just a few moments. But moving on to the second semi-final Adair and Father Casey's 4 o'clock in Newcastle West. For Father Casey's, it's a long overdue semi-final. They finally got the monkey out the back or off the back with that win over KP in the quarters. For Adair, semi-finals are becoming a standard for them. I'm struggling to think that have they reached semi-final every year, back up in the grade. In fairness to them, they were beaten in the final last year. Probably haven't been as good this year, but for Adair, they have such a know-how how to win, kind of like, in the Piercing in the hurling, that even when they're not going well, they have that know-how, and that's probably the overriding factor and challenge in the way of Father Casey's coming into Sunday.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jack. And the big unknown in this, Jack, and we have this semi-final versus quarter-final versus semi-final conundrum again, and it's in Father Casey's favour. But like Father Casey's have almost perennially been involved in the knockout stages, and like they hadn't won a knockout game since 2009 when they beat Palace Green in the semi-final. The big question going into Sunday's game is how much of a monkey off their back is the win over Kildimo Palace-Kenry. And it was a convincing win. Now, I've seen Casey's a couple of times this year, and they tick an awful lot of boxes for me, Jack. I think they're getting it spot on with the transition of bringing the players through from very successful minor and under 20 sides. They've had so much success at underage level that I think at last they're about to convert it into senior success. And the big question is, what will that win over Kildimo Palace-Kenry do for them? I would suggest an awful lot. Now, Adair, Adair, it's semi-final day. Being in the semi-finals is home from home. They're they've practically been in them all. They've won 3 county titles in recent years. Most of this squad has 3 county medals to their name. But for this particular competition, Jack, and you mentioned that they may not have been as impressive as usual. The loss of Hugh Burke, he is a talismanic figure in the Adair squad, is absolutely huge. The loss of Hugh Burke to anybody, be it club or county, is massive. He's an absolutely fantastic player, and we've seen over the years what he brings to the table. And I think he's going to be a huge loss. And this game, it's so hard to call, but I think there's an awful lot of momentum with Father Casey's. They have come to the precipice now, and can they make it? Big question, and big test of them. Like, their only defeat in the championship this year, Jack, was a single-point defeat at the hands of Newcastle West in the final round. Now, you'd say both of them are true, so what? Yeah, but there was a semi-final place up for grabs. Had they beaten Newcastle West, or I think had they even drawn with Newcastle West, if memory serves me right, that they would have got through in scoring difference, I think. I'm not 100% sure on that one. Maybe you'll correct me or confirm it, but that will give you a sense of the type of season that they've had. They've played 6 games, they've won 5 of them, lost only to the champions by a single point. So they're coming with pedigree, but they went through their group. You could say probably ambled through their group. Really, I suppose, apart from Ballylanders, who actually I saw their game with Ballylanders, who really put it up to them. Now, Kildimo Palace-Kenry put it up to them for quite a while as well. But they had to rely on a late point. I think for some Mark Connolly, or certainly one of the Connollys from a free, to get the better of Ballylanders. But I'm not being parochial now when I say this, Jack. I'm only just saying what I've seen during the campaign. And yeah, look, look, Jack, Sunday, and rightly so, as it should be, is going to be a sterner test than anything they have faced during the group stages.
Yeah, for Adair, I suppose Hugh was 20 when they won the intermediate title, and he's probably been the spearhead of all the success that has followed through and been a mainstay. So it's probably up to, like his brother Robbie, the Connollys you mentioned, Shane Doherty, like they were out on Ryan and Owen Costello would have been, key figures in all those wins as well. So it's how do they manage without Hugh Burke? They've done so far, but I just said they kind of amble through the group. But the question, I think the biggest question is for Father Casey is all those young players that have come through, like there is a nice few of them now in that team, like Larry Reardon, Dylan Quirk, Shane O'Connell, even Cormac Roach is that bit older but has been there a while. They had so much underage success that like their time is coming, but can they get over Adair, who have all the experience in the world? It's really, really finely poised.
Yeah, when you were rolling off their names there, you forgot Jack English, and what about the Lyons brothers, Davy
Yeah, the Lions.
and the evergreen Mikey? Who seems to
Yeah,
go on
there's been
forever.
a lot of those. A lot of the Adair team has, remained the same throughout the last 6 years, whereas for cases have been adding one or two every year, and they look far more settled this year. And it could be a case that we have terrible weather on Sunday, and it could just become a war of attrition. I think that would probably suit Father Casey's a small bit more, but Adair, when they get possession, they don't give it away very easily. It's. I think we could be looking at a potentially
course,
a replay here.
Yeah, and of course, Adrian Enright is absolutely, he's inspirational for Father Casey's. And you've Rory O'Brien inside in the corner, a serious corner forward. Like you mentioned, Cormac Roach, they're really settling in as a centre back, and he's like you've Daniel Daly, who is quite experienced, and you look at the Father Casey's bench, Jack, and you have such experience as John Reardon, David Ward, Owen Joy to come off it. If it was needed. So, yeah, I think this is. I'm not going to give you a hint as to what I'm going to predict.
I can't tell. I think when I decided,
I'm keeping you in suspense, Jack.
Yeah, it'll only be a few minutes away. We will move into the predictions now, Matt. I think we've all any other businesses gone through, but I'll get the hurling semi-finals and the football semi-finals off you. We'll start with the junior hurling and Doon Drum Broadford versus Patrickswell.
Drum by 2.
Drum by 2. I have Drum as well. I'm going to go Drum by 5. They just seem to have that bit of momentum built up. St. Kieran's versus Killeedy.
Kieran's by 3.
Kieran's by 3. I do kind of fancy Kieran's, but I had said the winner of Killeedy and Kokora will come through. So I'll stick with that and I'll go Killeedy by 1. Semi-finals Intermediate Hurling Championship. Croke Kilfinney versus Palace Green.
Croke Kilfinney by 3.
Croke by 3. I have Croke by 4. And then the Piercing versus Grana Ballingarry.
Grana Ballingarry by 2.
Grana Ballingarry by 2. I have the Piercing by 2. And then into the Senior Football Championship, and maybe you might want to elaborate where you're coming with this one, but Newcastle West versus Monaleen.
I'm going for Newcastle West by 3 points, Jack. Like we'll say, the hurling is off the agenda now. They were trying to juggle with both of them up till now, and there is a considerable crossover. So yeah, I'm going that Newcastle West will pull it together for the semi-final, and that odd dip in form that you mentioned earlier on, that I don't think it'll come on Sunday, and I think they'll get over the line.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Newcastle West as well. I'm gonna go by 4 points. I did mention that blip, but I don't know. Will we see it this year? They just seem a very determined side, and they would have been hopeful of a double final. So without the hurlers there, I think all the eggs are in the football basket, and they won't have had a chance to, focus on one. But it's similarly for Monaleen, they'll have a share of dual players, and they do have a final to look forward to as well. So, it'll be interesting. We're both on Newcastle, and then the one I'm sure we've been debating over throughout the podcast, Adair versus Father Casey is probably the most evenly poised matchup we have all weekend.
We've been agonising about it, Jack, as well as debating about it. I'm going Father Casey's by 2.
Father Casey's by 2. What will pull him through?
I just think that, that the monkey off their back is absolutely huge. I think I've seen them this year. I've seen them when they were very good, and I've seen them when they were not so good. But there was no hiding in any of the games, Jack, about what a talented side they are. They're a really, really talented side, and I think John Colbert and his selectors down there, I think they've really got the balance right, and like they have made the breakthrough through the group, through the knockout stages for a reason, and it's because they damn well deserve to do it, Jack. And I'm going for them by 2 points.
Yeah, all the signs do seem to be pointing towards Casey's coming through, finally reaching the final, and someone best in Adair in the semis. But I am sticking with Adair by 2. I just think their know-how might get them through. Experience of big days. Again, I think the momentum is with Casey's, but I just fancy Adair. For some reason, judging by our predictions, I'm having a repeat of last year's final. You think could be Casey's and Newcastle in a repeat of that final round game. In the intermediate hurling, you're thinking Granabel and Gary versus Croke. I have the Piercy versus Croke. And then in the junior, Kieran's versus Drum. And I have Khalidi versus Drum, but very cautionary there. I suppose for reference, Matt, last week you moved further clear after finally getting ahead. You backed all winners last week. I hope you had a bit of money on it. Kilmallock Nap in the senior, and Bruff and Monaleen in the Premier Intermediate. I obviously had Doon and Effin fancied. So, I mean, you're going 55 to 52 clear as we approach the business end of the season. But there's still time there yet, Matt, for me to come back. But you're sitting comfortably up there at the moment.
No. The crown is shaking, Jack. The crown is wobbling.
It is, again, all for a bit of fun and just add another intriguing layer between you and I. I think some people do get enjoyment out of it, but I'm never going against the team. It's always for one team with the caveat the other team might win. But again, we don't pucker.
Go on. I'll give you the chance this time.
We don't kick a ball or puck a ball. We're only watching on and enjoying the games. And, we're just trying to promote the games after all. But those are our predictions. Those are the games this weekend. A load again to go through. Again, congratulations to the teams last week that won championships or got to finals. Best of luck to all the teams. We've 6 mouth-watering semi-final ties there to look forward to. There's obviously Share Junior B and under 21s and all that coming along. And the Munster championships aren't that far away. But for now, Matt, I think we'll leave it at there. We're nearly at the 70-minute mark.
Just that you mentioned the Junior Bs there now. They're very, very near conclusion.
Yeah, Matt's cut off there again. I just have the fixtures up here, and I'll start with the football. You have Knockaderry, who were West champions. They beat St. Kieran's. They play Castletown, Ballygrand, or Ballylanders. They have to meet in the South final. Kildare Palskenry won the City. They play Ula, who were runners-up in the East. Knockan won that, and they play in the Piershik. And then in the other quarterfinal, it's St. Kieran's, again against the winners of the South Championship. I just gave the rundown there of the football, Matt. Knockaderry versus Castletown, Ballygrand or Ballylanders. KP versus Ula. Kieran's will meet the South champions, and Knockan versus the Piershik. I'll let you take the hurling if you want.
Well, no, the hurling isn't as far advanced because you have Fedimore will be playing Kildare Palskenry, and Doon will be playing Ballybrown.
Yeah.
But the West final is due to be on this Saturday. It's on in Sean Finn Park in Rathkeale at 4 o'clock between Knockaderry and Granaballangary. Now the South are a bit behind. The South semi-final between Brewery and Glenrue is on tonight in Doon. And the winners will play Bruff in the final at 2 o'clock on Sunday in Paddy Carroll Park in Ballygran.
There'll be a quick turnaround there for whoever gets through it. And just as I say that, it is lashing rain in Ballysteen. I hope it eases. But yeah, we have...
It's quite dry. It's quite dry in Glenrue, but I can see it coming, Jack.
Yeah, it is coming your way, and it is fairly fierce. Couple of under-21 games on tonight, just looking at my fixtures here. Doon versus Garryspillane and Carradevon, and the Piercing versus Ballybrown in McNeville Park. Obviously last night Mungert and Patchwell played out a draw, but 70 minutes and a half on the clock there, Matt. We've gone through nearly everything. I'm sure there's stuff we miss every week, but we'll leave it at that. A huge thank you to you, as always. Thank you to everyone listening and getting involved, asking questions or whatever during the week and during the podcast. We couldn't do it without you. So again, a huge thank you to you, Matt. I'm sure I'll see you at some fixture over the weekend. But for now and for Tree Talk, we'll be back next week. Thank you and good luck.
The impression again we get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left?